Hi, everyone. Happy summer solstice. We'll get started in just about a minute as the attendees start filtering in. All right, we'll get started. Thanks again, everyone, for joining us today. Welcome to the Building Initiative for Low Emission Development Program, also referred to as BUILD, launch webinar. My name is Allison Whitwer, and I'm with TRC, and I'll be moderating today's presentation. Friendly reminder before we get started to all registered attendees will receive a link to this recording after the presentation. Please also be sure to keep an eye out for our 2-question survey that will appear on your screen after the presentation concludes. That's a way for you to let us know if you would like to be contacted by a member of our team about any of your projects. You can enter questions throughout the presentation in the Q&A box, and we'll review all submitted questions during the Q&A session at the end. Our agenda today includes program and incentive overviews, example build projects, co-leveraging opportunities, and how to get started. We're going to launch a quick poll real quick to get an idea of who is in today's audience. So please select your role. There's a few options here, and if you have a few people in the room with you, you can choose more than one. We're thinking most of the audience may consist of developers or builders, manufacturers, contractors, energy consultants, HERS raters, architects, and utility, government agency, or city and municipal representatives. All right, just another second or two. Okay, let's go ahead and close the poll. Okay, nice mix today. Lots of developers and builders, energy consultants, and representatives. So thanks again, everyone, for joining. Next, I will be introducing our speakers today. But real quick, let me introduce the technical assistance team. So the technical assistance component of the BUILD program is implemented by the Association for Energy Affordability, TRC, and the California Housing Partnership. Our presenters today are Brandon Ferris and Brianna Moncada. Brandon Ferris is a project manager with TRC, and Brianna is a sustainable housing program manager with the California Housing Partnership. So to kick things off today, I'll pass the mic over to Brianna.
Perfect. Thank you, Allison. Hi, everyone. My name is Brianna. Like Allison mentioned, I'm with the California Housing Partnership. I want to start us off by providing you all with an introduction and an overview of the Building Incentive for Low Emission Development Program, or BUILD for short. Okay, so BUILD is a residential building decarb program for a wide variety of low-income housing. We'll go into a bit more detail on the type of housing that qualifies later on. But the program is being implemented by the California Energy Commission, the CEC, and it provides incentives and technical assistance for the adoption of all-electric technologies. BUILD allows you to have clean energy technologies, have it be more accessible to you, the developers, and benefit low-income Californians. So why participate in the program BUILD? So developers can receive up to $2 million in incentives to reduce construction costs. So the $2 million is for the entire portfolio, and it's not a $2 million per project. Again, we'll go into the breakdown of the incentives later on in this presentation. But BUILD also provides and assists with the reduction of long-term utility costs for both the owners of the buildings and the residents. It also provides in-house capacity for all electric buildings. In addition to this, Build can assist developers prepare for the current and the future state and local building electrification policies. And depending on the type of residential buildings and projects, can receive additional funding for affordable housing from affordable housing funds and other clean energy programs. So our technical assistance team will kind of help you maximize and let you know what the best way to move forward with that is. They'll ensure that you're maximizing your incentive and not double dipping in incentive funds for the same equipment. So lastly, Build will help eliminate the cost of gas infrastructure, and you'll be able to receive up to 300 hours of no-cost technical assistance to help overcome design costs, construction barriers, any permitting questions that you may have. And I think we can move on to the next slide. Okay. So who is eligible to participate for the Build program? So any building owners, developers of low-income housing that have at least 5 years of development experience and have completed at least one low-income project. So it doesn't have to be all electric. As long as you've completed at least one low-income housing, you'll be eligible for Build. Okay, so eligibility requirements for the type of project. So there are a few requirements that owners and developers must meet for the incentive. So the first is that the project must meet low-income residential housing income restrictions. So there's a bit of requirements for that one, and we'll go into a bit more detail on the next slide. But addition to the low-income requirements, the property must also be all electric and have no hookups to get the gas distribution grid. They must demonstrate modeled resident utility costs, and they must be in one of the following 4 gas service territories. So that will be either SoCalGas, PG&E, SDG&E, or Southwest Gas Corporation. Okay, next slide. Okay, so yeah, this slide will go over some of the low-income residential housing income limits requirements. So we separated it out into single-family low-income requirements and multifamily low-income requirements. So for single-family, they must be low-income residents sold at an affordable housing cost to a lower-income household that is subject to a resale restriction or equity sharing agreement for which the homeowner does not receive a greater share of equity. And for multifamily low-income requirements, they must meet at least one or more of the following 3 conditions. The first is the property is in a disadvantaged community, or DAC, which is determined by zip code and CalEnviro screens. And it's consistent with the income requirements of the affordable multifamily financing source. The second is the property is in a low-income community in which at least 50% of households have an income less than 60% of the AMI, area median income, and is consistent with the income requirements of the affordable multifamily funding source. And then the third one is at least 80% of the household living in the building must have incomes at or below 60% of the area median income, AMI. So yeah, these are some of the low-income residential housing requirements that are required for Build. If you have any questions later on in the presentation, or if you're interested, someone from our technical assistance can help kind of determine if you meet these requirements or not. Okay. So the type of buildings that are eligible for Build. So there's a few different types of buildings. The first is newly constructed building. So any kind of project or plans that you're considering starting, that would be eligible for Build. Any existing buildings that are going to be repurposed for housing would also qualify. And then building additions or renovations where 50% or more of the existing bearing weights are going to be removed or demolished will also make the project eligible. And so the type of buildings that are also eligible range from single family types to multifamily types, to dorms, to condos. We have a whole list right here on your right-hand side. So there's a lot of options and a lot of ways for buildings to participate. Okay, next up we have the new Adopter Design Award. So this is going to be separate from the actual incentive portions that you'll get for the actual equipment that you install. So the purpose of the Adopter Design Award is to encourage properties and developers to go all electric and to help offset some of the design costs and some of those barriers, kind of completing your first all electric multifamily project. Build is offering up to $100,000 in a design award to kind of offset some of those costs that come with your first all electric project. So the requirements for this is that, again, they must be all electric. It must be low income, meet the low income requirements, and it must be a multifamily building with 10 units or more. Okay, technical assistance. So as I mentioned early on, Build offers incentives for the proposed electric measures that you're considering at your site. But we also offer free technical, up to 300 hours of technical assistance. So it's a separate application. The applicants can submit an application to receive this assistance. Someone from our technical assistance team will provide educational resources on all electric building designs, technology, equipment. They'll be there to support you through all of the phases. So from the development phase, which includes building designs, to the construction phase and installing equipment, anything with any permit questions that you may have, any questions on zero emission tech. So these are some of the things that our technical assistance team can assist you on along the way. Okay, and to go over more in detail on the incentives for Build, I'll pass it over to Brandon.
Perfect, thank you, Brianna. Hello, everyone. My name is Brandon Ferris. I'm one of the project managers working with the Build technical assistance team. I'm here today to take you a little bit through the Build incentives and other program details. So no better place to start than with incentives, right? So as previously mentioned, this program is designed to aid in the development of electric affordable housing. The Build program really prides itself in being able to offer incentives to help offset cost and encourage the market to move towards electrification in a much more permanent way. We have a variety of incentives available, and we've broken it down into these 4 boxes here for your total incentive. The first incentive is your base GHG incentive. This is your greenhouse gas. So GHG stands for greenhouse gas. And this incentive is based on the greenhouse gas emissions avoided. The next incentive is your building efficiency. This is based on the percentage above code of your project. Incremental PV, based on the flat rate of PV above code, PV standing for photovoltaics. And then the last incentive that we have is the kickers incentives, and these are for additional GHG reduction technologies. So on the right-hand side here, you have $1,700 per bedroom of average minimum greenhouse gas incentive. As projects have come in, we've had an idea of the average incentive that this the specific incentive would incur, and $1,700 seems to be the average of it. The greenhouse gas incentive is one of the larger incentives that the program kind of stems towards. So $1,700 per bedroom is pretty is stated here. We also have $2 million for a program cap per applicant. I want to emphasize that the program incentive cap, like the free program technical assistance, is per applicant, not per project. So just kind of, for example, If developer A, who is the applicant, has 5 developments or projects, that developer A would be awarded $2 million across all of the projects. Okay, just to kind of clear that up. So next, we're going to go into how some of these incentives are calculated. This slide is very specifically towards that. It mentions 3 of the 4 incentives in total. The first question is probably, how is this all calculated, right? The CEC has developed 2 methods of calculation, the simple calculator and the custom path tool. So the simple calculator is used to provide applicants with an idea of incentives for your project. It is not meant to be an exact depiction of your incentives, but more of a general idea. And this can be completed by either your project team, like your energy consultant, or the technical team that's a part of the program. We also have the custom path tool, or what we refer to it as the CPT. It is used to provide applicants with exact incentives and requirements based on the proposed model of the building developed by your energy consultant. And this can be completed also by either the project team or the technical assistance team. So let's kind of jump into the, let's go top to bottom here, right? So the first one that we're going to be looking at is the base GHG incentive. This is tailored to your total GHG emissions avoided for your project. And it is in relation to your project's electric building versus its mixed fuel counterpart. And that can all be, all of that, all those that incentive can be deduced versus by the CPT that we just talked about. So once calculated using the custom path tool, the program provides a flat rate of 150 metric tons of annual avoided GHG emissions multiplied by the 30-year effective life of the building. Okay, so moving on to the building efficiency. Now, this is directly associated to the efficiency of your building. It says envelope, mechanical efficiencies, heating and cooling loads. If the compliance is, whatever the compliance is up to 10%, you'd be eligible to up to $1,000 per bedroom. And this is based on the sliding scale of compliance margin from 0 to 10. So just kind of to provide an example for this, if your compliance margin is 4.4%, your project or your building would be eligible for $440 per bedroom. If it was at 8%, it'd be $800. If it was at 50%, it would be maxed at $1,000, as that's the cap for the specific incentive type. And last year, we have the incremental PV. So this program is for low income development. Thus, there needs to be a positive impact on the residents individually. This is primarily achieved through the addition of PV to the building to kind of meet that resident utility savings requirement, which we'll talk a little bit about further on. But long story short, for single family and low-rise multifamily, it's $1.30 per watt that will incentivize above the mandatory required PV via code, and will incentivize $3 for mid-rise and high-rise multifamily projects. If your project requires, in further iterations of the energy code, if the project requires your mid to high-rise multifamily requires PV, will incentivize up to $1.30 per watt instead of that $3, which is stated here, just to kind of pull that all together. Next, we have the kicker incentives. So this is the last incentive that we provide in order to total all of the incentives. The build program provides kicker incentives for technologies that further reduce GHG emissions. The benefits would not be included in a modeled GHG reduction in that base incentive that we were talking about. The program wants to offset costs for you and your developments to go above and beyond in installing and offering efficient and progressive equipment. So as you can see the list here, we have one of the kickers is grid flexibility with the smart thermostats, our JA13 compliant heat pump water heaters. And then we have low GHG refrigerants. This would be on the timetable of less than 750 or less than 150, and you get incentivized dependent on that range. Induction cooktops, heat pump clothes dryers, on-site energy storage, and then of course EV chargers as well. I do want to point out just below electric vehicle supply equipment, that second icon. The third one down is bidirectional EV charging. Just so everyone knows kind of what that is, bidirectional charging is the capability of an EV charger to enable power flow from the grid to the vehicle or vice versa from the vehicle to the grid when required. So these are the kickers that are available as it stands today. Just to dive a little bit deeper into the modeled resident or the modeled utility cost savings, the build program requires the design of the building must meet or must result in a 5% resident utility cost savings for the building's residents. This requirement being met will be assessed when determining your project's incentives based on the proposed model provided. So as the requirement is based on utility savings, climate zone, and utility territory, all these things will play in a factor of that requirement being met. So an important consideration here when trying to both understand if we were going to be meeting that cost savings requirement or how to meet it is to improve the building efficiency or the envelope, right? High performance equipment efficiencies, and then of course allocating additional PV to the residents. Ultimately, your incentives are tied to the efficiency of the building. So inevitably, the higher the efficiency of the building, the greater the incentive. Thus lowering the need to add additional PV to the building. It is worth mentioning, however, that for most projects participating in the program to date, additional allocation of PV to meet that 5% resident utility cost savings requirement has been needed. So if you do plan on participating in the program, a kind of preemptive knowledge of knowing that the possibility to add additional PV to your building is there. It's definitely prevalent. And of course, we do incentivize meeting that goal, meeting that requirement through the incentives that we provide, including that incremental PV incentive. The technical assistance team is here to support the development into meeting this requirement. This is providing recommendations, obviously understanding the requirement, and maybe some different things we can take in order to meet that requirement. Okay, moving on to the program participation roadmap. So this slide depicts the full program participation roadmap. This is first and foremost, although optional, we do recommend always submitting a technical assistance application to get you and your projects connected to a technical team member to help throughout this entire process. Although it's completely possible to do it all on your own, the 300 hours of free assistance will make this process considerably easier. So the first stage, the second little blue bubble that's on this graphic here is the first stage of the program, and this is the design reservation application. You'll be happy to know that this is a completely optional portion of the program. You're not required to reserve incentives during the design stage, but we do prefer that you start with the program as early as possible to both reserve your incentives early and understand the requirements for the program to adjust construction if need be. One caveat to that, though, would be if you do meet the requirements for the new Adopter Design Award that Brianna had spoken about earlier, submitting a design reservation application would be required. Moving on to the next bubble here, this is the construction reservation application. This would be the second stage of the program, and this is not optional. This application is required as this construction reservation will reserve exact incentives and confirm eligibility for your project. The next two green bubbles here, we have the first progress payment and the second progress payment. These payments are dispersed in either one of two ways, either through the progress of the construction as shown here, first and second payment through progress, or one lump sum as at the project completion. You can discuss this with your technical assistant and would be able to decide, or we'd be able to help out and speaking through if it makes more sense to do the progress payments or one lump sum at the end. You have the opportunity for both. But assuming that we wanted to do the progress payments, this is paid out in a very specific way. The first progress payment would be up to 25% of that base GHG incentive. And this is available for disbursement with the building permits approved. The second progress payment would be an additional 50% of the base GHG incentive available for disbursement once foundation has been poured. Just to recap for both of these progress payments, prior to your project being complete, you're available to be awarded 75% of that base GHG incentive throughout construction. And finally, our final stage here is project completion. This will consist of the remainder of disbursement of incentives being your base GHG incentive, the efficiency, incremental PV, and kicker incentives. This will all be paid out once the TCO or the CO has been provided, the TCO being the temporary certificate of occupancy, or the CO, which is the certificate of occupancy. And this is the participation roadmap. Just a reminder, throughout this entire process, technical assistance is available. So if it seems in any way daunting or seems like a long process, just know that we're here for you the entire, every step of the way. So let's jump into some real world example projects that would be participating in Build. Example projects. Perfect. So we drafted up some examples just to kind of give you a visual representation of what projects of similar like would be able to be incentivized for. I'm going to give basic project descriptions, the kickers that they'll be participating with, as well as kind of a breakdown of the incentives. So this project is just under 70,000 square feet. This is one building at 4 stories, makes it a high-rise multifamily building through the energy code. We have 100 units, 119 bedrooms. I want to point out that the number of bedrooms for your project is very much pertinent when it comes to this program, as we incentivize the building efficiency incentive based on the number of bedrooms, not necessarily the number of units. So it's important that we understand those figures early and often to be able to incentivize appropriately. The percentage above code for this project is 8.7%, and they are taking 119. They're taking the kickers of 119 smart thermostats, and we'll break down the incentive amount on the right-hand side here. So the greenhouse gas-based incentive, this is over the 30-year life expectancy of the building. This project, based on the calculations done by the CPT in the simple calculator, is saving 71 metric tons of GHG a year or annually at $150 per metric ton. This is $10,650 per year over the course of 30 years. This project is eligible for $319,500 for incentive based on this greenhouse gas incentive. This is your base incentive. Moving on to the building efficiency. So you're available up to $1,000 per bedroom, right? So up to 10%. This project is on a sliding, or this incentive sliding scale from 0 to 10. This is 8.7%. This is $870 per the number of bedrooms, which would equal $103,530. Incremental PV incentive. So this project needed to add an additional 5.75 kWdc of PV in order to meet that resident utility cost savings. We'll incentivize this as they're not required by code to install additional PV. They'll be allowed an allotment of $3 per watt, which would equal just over $17,000. And lastly, we have the total kicker incentive, which would be 119. They're doing smart thermostats at $50 per unit, just under $6,000. So all these incentives combined gives this project a total of $446,230. To kind of give you a visual representation of where the majority of the money is pulling from on what part of your project, and maybe what we can do to raise that incentive amount, we have these series of graphics here. So the vast majority of this projects and most projects, maybe I think all projects, the base GHG incentive is going to be where the vast majority of your money is pulling from. This project is just over 300,000, with the next being 100,000 for the building efficiency incentive. Once again, the higher the efficiencies of your equipment, the higher efficiencies of your envelope, and so on and so forth, the greater incentives you'll get through the GHG incentive, the building efficiency, and of course, all the incentives as a total. 17,000 for PV, and once again, this is a total of 446,230 for the full incentives for Build for this specific high-rise multifamily project. Now we're gonna move over to what a low-rise multifamily could look like. So this is a total of 7 buildings. This project is would be participating with 7 buildings, a total of 51,802 square feet. I want to point out that this is a series of 2 to 3 story buildings. We don't generally calculate like this. We generally calculate incentives. In fact, we only calculate incentives on an individual building basis, just for the sake of time and the amount of slides it would take to divide by 7 different buildings, which kind of aggregated the data for you to have a basic understanding of what it looks like. The total incentives for this project divided by 7 versus kind of brought together and aggregated data by 7 is negligible. So this is pretty similar to the incentives for all 7 buildings. We have a total of 72 units, 106 bedrooms, 8.3% above code, 42 metric tons saved over, through the entire calculation, just under $200,000 in incentive. 8.3, this is $830 per bedroom. At 106, it's $87,000. This incremental PV incentive, now I'm going to pause on this one because this is kind of an important thing to note. So this specific project had 7 buildings come in at relatively high efficiency. 6 of the 7 buildings meet the resident utility cost savings. Only one of the buildings did not meet it, and it missed it by 1.29 kWdc in order to meet that 5% threshold for resident utility cost savings. So, it happens. If you have a number of buildings, one of them may not make it, one of them or the rest of them may, or they all make it, whatever the case is, we won't be able to determine that until we get your project into the custom path tool to be able to determine exactly how much incremental PV would be necessary. But this just goes to show that not every project and not every building needs to add PV, but we do incentivize if you need to. Next, we're looking at the total kickers. So this specific project is taking none. We did this purposefully, as we understand that across the state, developers are not always taking kickers. You're not always going to put in an induction cooktop or put in smart thermostats or whatever the case is. So I wanted to give an accurate kind of we didn't want to inflate the kind of incentives that you'd be getting in this project. These are very true to what example projects or low-rise multifamilies of this kind would look like. And adding kickers is just gravy. You're just adding more money to the pot here by adding kickers. And you can always work with one of the technical assistance representatives to walk through what those kickers may look like for your units and for your bedrooms. Okay. Once again, visual representation. Most of this incentives for this project is going to be through the greenhouse gas incentive. All things considered and all things combined for all buildings, we're looking at just over $250,000, $279,646. And just a reiteration, throughout construction, that $189,000, you'd be eligible to receive up to 75% of that prior to project completion, which is a considerable amount of the total incentives for this specific project. All right, moving on to program co-leveraging. So BUILD is actively coordinating with multiple programs across the state to connect projects to additional funding sources within the programs. One of the interesting parts about this program in particular, as just stated, is we are coordinating with multiple programs across the state, and we are working with them. And BUILD is here to assist you and your teams in getting connected with those programs as well. That being said, it is also imperative for the program that there's a level of transparency in working with different programs in order to avoid receiving multiple incentives for the same equipment, a term we refer to as double dipping. The BUILD technical team will aid in confirming applicants are participating in the most appropriate programs. A good example of this is that second bullet. So BUILD cannot layer with any cap and trade programs for the same equipment design elements. If you are working with multiple programs, just keep us in the loop. We'll be able to assess whether you'd be able to participate in this program, and so on and so forth. So just that high level of transparency for working with other programs, both we'd be able to assist you in working with other programs, as well as be able to deduce whether they're appropriate programs to coincide. A perfect layering example is between the two programs, program to BUILD, the Building Initiative for Low Emissions Development Program. This is our program we're talking about today, as well as another program out there called Energy Smart Homes. This is the example, that low-rise example that we discussed a little bit earlier, that $279,646. If we were to couple that with the layered incentives of Energy Smart Homes, their total unit incentive is $129,000 for this project. Their average EDR incentive once again, specific to this project, $5,480 for a total of $135,080. Layering both programs together is $414,726. So this project is eligible for another just over $100,000 because they're participating in a layered program, such as the Energy Smart Homes program. So if you are interested in layering, you are interested in getting connected with other programs, we're consistently working with other programs to make the process easier, more defined for participants and everybody involved. This is just to give you an example and a quick caveat on this. The Energy Smart Homes program in particular is they have descending incentives. So this is based on the construction date of 2023. For a project like this, different years would yield different results as it relates to the incentive amount. So getting started today, first place we always tell people to start is the Build website. You could type in CEC Build Program CEC, kind of any three iterations of those three words in the search bar would take you to the link of the website. You could also go directly to the CEC website itself, search in the search bar for Building Initiative for Low Emissions Development, and they'll take you to the web page here. This is a full resource for everything and anything you'd ever need to know about the program. We have building guidelines, we have applications, instructions, and so on and so forth. So lots of information on the website, and always a first place to look. Applying for technical assistance is highly recommended. As stated before, you have 300 hours of free technical assistance. Just a quick reiteration, we provide educational resources. We support you throughout the entire development phases, including construction, understanding and installing near zero emissions technologies, as well as assistance with submission of the build incentive application and participation support. So we're here throughout that entire process. Here's a slide of the overview of documents that will be required throughout the design and the construction applications if you decide to start with design. But I know at first glance this may seem a bit cumbersome, but with the help of our technical team, we can provide direction or clarification for all documents. We'll start on the left-hand side here with the design application. Once again, this reservation in particular is optional. Although it is encouraged, it is not required to participate in the program. Once this application is complete and reviewed, the incentives for your project will be reserved for 18 months. We do provide a 6-month extension if needed. So we'll go briefly over the documents to gain just a bit of a better understanding of what these documents actually are and how maybe they can be, how maybe you can grab them to fill them out and get that in the application in. So the attestation, which can be found on our website, is a short 2-page document acknowledging program guidelines and requirements. The next one is the supplemental application narrative. This can be found on our website as well. This is a 3-page document, and this kind of describes the project in greater detail so that we can determine eligibility for your project. The next one is the energy model or the simple calculator. This design reservation is very particular with the simple calculator. As once again, the simple calculator is kind of a general overview. So you can request incentives that way, but until we get to construction reservation, we would need specifically the energy model to run it through the CPT to get exact incentives. But you are 100% able to submit an application, design application with a simple calculator to reserve incentives early for your project. CF1R and NRCC, these can be provided by your energy consultant. And this would only be applicable if you were submitting an energy model instead of the simple calculator. The payment data record, this can be found on the website as well. It's a 2-page document based for your payee information. And last couple things here are the Calenvero screen, the 3.0 score for DAC. This is the mapping tool that can be utilized to identify if a project is located in the California community that's considered a disadvantaged or low income area. And then last, for the design application, if eligible, a paid invoice would be required if you were eligible for that New Adopter Design Award. So next, we'll move forward with the construction documentation. Once the construction reservation application is completed and reviewed, the incentives for your project will be reserved for 36 months, plus 12-month extension if needed. So just to be clear on that, the design reservation, that 18th month reservation is plus 6-month extension is to get you to the construction application. Once you get the construction application submitted and your incentives reserved, you have an additional 36 months to complete construction plus a 12-month extension if needed. Yeah, so without doing the design reservation first, the construction application requires basically the same amount of documents as the design application, with the addition of the building permit and evidence of affordable housing. There's 2 bullets at the bottom there. If your project is applying at construction application and you have already completed the design application, they're not all required again, right? Just updated documents would be required. This may include the energy model, the CF1R, NRCC, if not previously submitted, as well as an updated attestation supplemental narrative, and of course, the addition of the approved building permit and the evidence of affordable housing. Okay, so both of these applications, these reservation applications, are at different stages of your project's life, I guess would be the term, and they're reserved differently, right? So lastly, we have project completion. To be honest, we don't want to spend too much time on this, as there's a multitude of requirement documentations included. Here would be the TCO or the CO, that certificate of occupancy, a demonstrated modeled resident utility costs, final energy model, additional project-specific documentation, all of the above, right? These documentations together would be all this documentation together would get you to receive that qualified incentive amount, past the progress payments or in a lump sum, as discussed previously. I think it's important to note for project completion that if there is any changes within your project during construction, letting us know early and often would keep us up to date on the incentive amount that you'd be allocated for. So just a level of transparency throughout this project for if you're making any major changes or any changes that would affect the energy model and essentially affect your incentives would be great. So let's go over some resources and then we'll head over to questions. So the program guidelines, which can be found in the website, is basically everything that we go off of for the program. If you have a question for us and we don't know the answer to it, we'll go to the program guidelines, because that's the full details for the program eligibility and requirements. So if you ever have questions about the program, you can always refer back to these guidelines and search throughout the folder or search throughout the pages to find exactly what you need. If you can't find it, you're looking for greater clarification on something, we're always available to help you out. That's part of the reason why we've allotted that 300 hours of technical assistance, is to help you through all the questions that you may have for the program. Free technical assistance, this is definitely the first place to start. Keep iterating it because it's extremely helpful. Getting involved in the process, getting connected with somebody to walk you through eligibility, and of course, understanding requirements and incentives. For more information, of course, visit the website, as it has everything you'd possibly need for the program. All right, thank you all, and we're available for any questions.
Thanks, Brandon and Brianna, for providing that abundance of information on the BUILD program. We have a few questions that have come in, and I want to encourage everyone to continue to submit questions. We have about 15 minutes for this Q&A session before the end of our time today. Also just wanted to note, if we don't get to your question, we will follow up with you directly. So before I jump into questions, I also just wanted to make a comment that the TA team will provide fuel switching assistance to developers who want to switch from a mixed fuel to an all-electric building. So please do still reach out to us if you have planned to install gas in your project and it's not too late to make the change. So first question is in the overview section. It's regarding where the project is located. Can it be located in the gas IOU territory but not served by the gas IOU? So for example, a project that's receiving power from San Francisco Public Utilities Commission, or SFPUC.
Yeah, I can answer that. So a good question. So just to kind of refer back to this projects or eligibility. So in relation to the 4 IOUs, gas service territories, or I guess territory-based eligibility, The 4 IOUs, if they are located in these 4 IOUs, the territory that they're residing in would qualify for the program. So SC, so Southern California Gas, Pacific Gas and Electric, San Diego Gas and Electric, or Southwest Gas Corporation.
Thanks, Brandon. Actually, another overview question. Is the DAC determined by SB 535 CalEnviro screen map or another source?
That's a good question. I believe it's the CalEnviro Screen 3.0, but maybe somebody can clarify that.
Yes, that's accurate, Brandon. The CalEnviro Screen 3.0.
Okay, perfect.
Thanks, Sophia. Okay, and then a few questions have come in about the incentive program layering. So one person just wanted you to go back to it, and I had a question come in as well that we can answer while we're on the slide. So actually this is similar, but we can just stay on this slide. In the layering example with California Energy Smart Homes, are the incentives for the same energy efficiency measures?
The same. So the incentives for both programs are calculated differently. So build incentivizes differently. We do greenhouse gas emission savings, building efficiency, PV, and kickers. Energy Smart Homes incentivizes based on the number of, and I'm not an Energy Smart Homes expert, so we'll definitely have to reach out to them if for better clarification. But they incentivize based on the units, the number of units, as well as the efficiency EDR of the project. And as expressed before, that's a descending incentive from year to year.
And Brandon, this is Nick with AEA. I'm just jump in real quick. Just one important distinction is that these two programs are from different funding sources, and so that's why they're able to be layered for the same project. I think to the person's question, for the same, technologies that are going to achieve these efficiencies, they're different funding sources, so we can layer them together. We don't have to worry about double dipping with these two programs.
Perfect. Thanks, Nick.
Thanks, Al. We have a question about the $2 million program budget cap. And I think we need to clarify that that's per owner, right? It's not for the entire program. So the question was whether it sounds like that would incentivize about 6 to 8 projects. And is there indication that the program budget will be augmented? But I think the main clarification point there is that's the cap per owner or developer, right?
Yes, that is correct. It's per a developer, not per project, and definitely not for the entirety of the program.
Yeah, thanks, Brandon. And we have a question about the application narrative form. Essentially wondering what kinds of questions are asked. Is that something that can be viewed on the website? Like, is that form easy to access?
Yeah, it's definitely easy to access. If you go on the website and you go on incentives and you scroll all the way down to the bottom, it would provide all the forms that are required for the application. And they're short, basically type in questions that you can answer for that narrative. So it's all that is on the website and can be easily accessible there.
Great, thanks. Okay, we have a question that is essentially a scenario. If construction is planned to last longer than 48 months overall, but it's a multifamily low-rise development with 21 different buildings, each of which will be built in under 36 months, should the project team set up 2 separate applications for the build incentive and split it up into the 2 sets of buildings so the whole construction timeline is covered?
Wow, what a great question. Yeah, that's I think a lot of these understandings would be on a case-by-case basis. So speaking with somebody through technical assistance, when the time comes to when we're going to be going over that application, we'd be able to go into much greater detail on, what the timeline looks for all of these projects, and if there's a need to separate the incentives, or we can provide exceptions or whatever the case is. Yeah, just getting that that specific scenario into technical assistance, we'd be able to make a deeper dive and a more educated answer than what I'm able to give right now.
Thanks, Brandon. A couple questions have come in about the incentive budget. Is there a possibility? Well, let me start with this one. What is the total budget for the program, and is there a program sunset date? And I can answer the total program budget. I have a note. It's 80 million over 4 years. So Brandon, 4 years is when the program is scheduled to sunset.
Yes. Any more specifics on that? I think Nick may be able to speak into.
I believe of the 80 million, 60 million is reserved for incentives. And this program was funded through the legislature. And so it would take a similar act of the legislature to increase the funding, although there is, money in the California budget. But the current funding sort of is what it is. There's no, to my knowledge, immediate plans for increasing it. As far as like what's available, I saw there was another question in the Q&A of like, how good of a shot do we have of getting this funding? We've gotten plenty of applications, but we're definitely not fully subscribed at this point. So I would encourage, as would Brandon and everybody else on here, encourage everybody to sign up for technical assistance and start working on your application as soon as possible so you can get your funds reserved. The program is not fully reserved currently, and the more folks hear about it, the more people will sign up. Eventually, it probably will be. So encourage everyone to start moving.
Thanks, Nick. Someone actually asked, how can a project increase their chances of having access to the funds? Is there anything a project team can do?
Well, I mean, probably the best answer to that is just as early and often as possible, connect with somebody on the project team to reserve or do that design assistance reservation. The sooner that you are in the project, the longer that you'd be able to reserve those funds for through design and then through construction to completion. So early as often.
Just to add on to that, it is first come, first served. So as long as you qualify and you meet all the program requirements and the funds are available, like you're eligible for the funding. It's not a competitive program where you have to be in the top 5% of applicants or anything. It's meet the qualifications, funding is available, then your project gets the funds.
Yeah, first step is to apply. That's the most important piece. Okay, those are all of the questions that have come in so far. I know we still have a few minutes. So if you have any additional questions, please pop those into the Q&A box. And Brandon, do you want to navigate over to maybe one of the resources slides, just so everyone can see those links for a few more seconds? Great. Okay. All right, yeah, no open questions remain. So I think we can end a bit early. Please, if you would like us to contact you about your projects, please complete the survey that will pop up on your screen once we close this webinar. We will get in touch with you then. We will also be sending a link to this recording and the slide deck to everyone who registered. So if you know anyone who registered but couldn't make it, they'll receive a link in their inbox soon. And we look forward to working with all of you. Thanks for your time today, and we hope to be in touch soon.